I would say that in my career, I've experienced a few, ups and downs. That's normal. I mean, it's part of moving up in your career.
How do you describe yourself?
I think I try to be humble. It's so great to reach out to someone, just make them feel that they're present. It's not just a job. It's not just coming to work Monday to Friday.
And what are some of the common traits of a successful COO?
In real estate, I would say one of my roles is if I have an asset. So part of that thinking is, how do I influence? And we have a brilliant team on board, but how do I play a part with them to say, you know what, maybe it's time we reposition this asset, or we look at it totally different and not let it get stagnant and perhaps just, fall in the cracks.
All right, Vince, it's a pleasure to have you on the Montreal Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
And before you start, for those who don't know who you are and what you do, please tell them.
I work for Groupe MACH. I'm their Chief Operating Officer. Started with them roughly 9-10 years ago as Vice President of Operations. And it's been a very interesting journey with Groupe MACH.
10 years is quite a long time.
Yeah, 9-10 in 2025. But yeah, interesting journey, I would say.
For sure. And did you know that you always wanted to be in that position as a COO?
No, I never really gave it any thought more than what it is. I mean, in my career path, I thought that one day I'd be somewhere in executive management, but I let it play out the way it was. Great, entourage, the mentors around me, the ones that inspired me. So that gave me confidence that as you get the experience, as you've seen it all or got some scars for it, maybe you deserve to move up the ladder. But it wasn't something that I was planning for, to be, COO of a real estate company.
But were you always in operations?
Always in operations, always in real estate, always in facility or property management, construction as well, project management. So my strength was there, my background is there, studied in urban planning and engineering. So I made it a point to keep to what I know best and to contribute in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Would you say those that are in project management today or directors of operations, these are the type of people that could ascend to a position like that?
Absolutely. Anyone that's in, the real estate industry, property management, will at some point in their career, if they're not senior already or senior level, they're all, there's the possibility, the growth is enormous.
I'm curious to know, how do people describe you, Vince?
I had a thought when I was coming up here, and I would say that I'm fair. I could be impulsive sometimes, hard, impulsive, but fair. At the end, I always have the best interest of the team. So that would make me a team player. It would make me someone that realizes that whatever I don't like or whatever hurt me in my career, wouldn't want it to be with the team. So, but I try to stay to that work hard, play hard mentality.
Could you give us an example of something that happened in your past with old bosses that you didn't want to do?
I would say that in my career, I've experienced a few, ups and downs. That's normal. I mean, it's part of moving up in your career. I would say that in one of my last employments, not a regret and not a negative thing, but I trusted a lot the employer. You give them so much and you trust so much, and, so many years later, you find yourself, a lawsuit that you're not even part of, and that hurts.
Yeah.
Knowing that things could have been done differently, and why me when I'm the only one last standing and probably the only ex-employee standing and had nothing to do with the file. So that hurts. You're left alone and you realize that's a mistake I wouldn't do today. I would not trust the employer to be always right. I would have to really think it through. But being completely transparent, I was probably naive. And, 30 years plus into the career, you would say, how can you be naive? But you trust. You trust the guy, the employer that's paying you. So that's something probably I would do different.
Okay, so then for people listening, so what should they do what lesson should they get out of?
I think rather than taking for granted that there's a document or that you owe it to the employer to do a certain task, if you feel that the task could entail other consequences, you need to get more informed. You really need to take a step back and say, what am I getting myself into? We might not understand it. Just legally speaking, we might not know what we're getting ourselves into, and to only realize later, oh my God, this has got a lot of other extensions to the original file.
Okay. Got it. And how do you describe yourself?
I think I try to be humble. I've been told from some closer, I say family, that I'm not yet there, but
Working on it.
Working on it. I would say I am. I care. I do deep inside. Sometimes impulse might make you do one thing, but at the end of the day, I'm down to earth, regular, family guy. And I think the most important part is my heart is as big as it is to always try to help, to always do the right thing.
Because you manage a big team as well.
Yeah, the operations department at Groupe MACH is roughly 220 employees. Obviously, there's direct reports to me, and it funnels down like a pyramid. But at the end of the day, they're the biggest department, and the ones that really are on the field. The ones that have to deal with it every day, with the tenants, with the buildings, with the condition, with the conformities, and all the issues. Everything that can go wrong. Well, we got to deal with it, and everything that goes right. Sometimes we don't get the recognition, but it's okay. I mean, it's part of the job.
You were telling me just before we started the podcast on how you send out a weekly emails to the team to encourage them. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. I took it upon myself, having experienced certain things after, 35 years in the business, 38 years, that it's so great to reach out to someone. Just make them feel that they're present. It's not just a job. It's not just coming to work Monday to Friday and, when things go right, great. You might get a pat on the shoulder. It was more about how do you reach a team and you really make them see that, hey, you're all my family. You're all my brothers and sisters or whatever it is. They need to feel, in French, they say appartenance. They need to feel that they're part of something a lot bigger than just a job. And so I send them a weekly message. I research it actually on the Sunday, and on the Monday morning, the first email that goes out is to them, the entire group. And it's usually to touch everyone. In some way I touch, and the motivational quote that I include in my weekly message is researched as well, because I know who I'm trying to really kind of inspire, others where they're doing already well and how to continue. And the feedback is great. I have to admit, what started off as I thought would have been, a crazy thing to do, I've gotten a lot of great feedback. Employees that write to me directly on the email and say, wow, you really touched me this week. This was heartfelt, and I can't wait to, do the week, and I got so much energy. To me, that means a lot. I think as a COO of a company or a vice president or anybody else in any position, it's nice to see the people reporting into you that care. And I come into work and I get the good mornings and good evening, sir, or they call me VDD just because of my name, Vince Di Domenico. But I thought that was cute. The entire company calls me VDD, and that sometimes, at first it was overwhelming. Today it's like, wow, you leave kind of a mark of some sort, and that I feel really humbled.
I like the name.
Yeah, VDD.
Because your goal as somebody who's in a position like yourself, it is to inspire people so that they want to be there. They want to be part of the team, like you say, and willingly do more things or get more involved in what they do. Because there's nothing worse than going to work and, with a dread, like you don't want to go. And
Well, I'll tell you, so, some of the messages when we have operational meetings where I take part in, I always say to them, you got to look yourself in the mirror in the morning. And if you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, wow, I just can't wait to get into my car or on public transport and run to MACH because I just love it there, then this is great. The day you wake up and you give yourself that, kind of ugly expression that you wish you were to stay in bed, then you've done something's not working, something's not jiving, and I believe in that, and a lot remember it. A lot of the staff members that I speak to from time to time always tell me, I know I got to look myself in the mirror, and if I'm looking at myself and there's no smile there's something wrong at Groupe MACH. But I've been fortunate that the people actually remember those things, and that means it's working. And,
yeah, for sure.
There's always going to be an up and down, turnover of some sort. You can't please everybody. But the mission is, if you can please 8 out of 10, you're doing your job.
That's very good. I like that. And when you go to work, what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, put aside the numerous emails, because you get copied also and everything. The typical day is really to make sure that your direct reports are following a certain protocol, that we're not deviating from what the objective is. At the end of the day, we're here to ensure that the client, which is our tenant, is being treated fairly. We're giving them the utmost interest and how can I put it, and attention. We want to make sure that that satisfaction level is there. So the idea for me is to ensure that I'm inspiring that we're doing that right. So that could mean, making sure that our customer satisfaction surveys are coming in on a timely manner, that we're reviewing the good and the bad. If it's good, then what can we learn from that to make it always good? And if it's bad, then where did we go wrong in those questions, right? It's pretty clear. So we do a lot of that. Part of my job is also to ensure, or to make sure on that typical day, that I'm always looking at the risk factor. My job is to reduce risk for the company as a whole, but in the operations side is just to, understand what that implies. So I'll give you, for instance, compliancy. It's a big word, but compliancy and adhering to it is a big deal because not everybody understands it the same way. So you need to make sure that you're in line. My role is to support that. My role is to push for that, not to have any conflicts with whether it be an authority or whether it be with a supplier. So there's that part of the job that's not necessarily talking only about budgets or the financials. But then there's the financials as well. Part of my job is to make sure, are we respecting our financial obligations, right? Yeah. So with tenants comes rent. With rent and revenues comes also the failure of not collecting it on a timely manner or having arrears. Do I make and strike a deal with a tenant in order to continue and to pursue a better avenue? Obviously, the revenues need to come in like any other landlord would want in order for us to also be able to continue and roll the machine. So I think part of my job is to ensure that it's not always easy. You've got the great tenants that pay you even before the first of the month. You got, those tenants that might pay you the middle of the month or might pay you a month later. How do you deal with that? Is it acceptable? Is it not acceptable? When is it that you pull the plug? It's all those discussions that are going on, and how can I avoid having to go legal? Because I never believed in conflicts. That's one thing about me. I've always believed you can resolve it. But yeah, part of the job is to make sure that at least we're on the right path with the group.
You do a lot.
Everyone
I feel like
does.
you have dashboards all over your office and you're looking at the charts. And
everyone does a lot. I try to be there. I really try to be also on the field. They say as an executive, you shouldn't be too much into the weeds, but it's only being into the weeds that I've realized, oh my God, there's a lot more here to it than just, an email. People fire out an email and they think that, the problem will be resolved. But until you actually get to see the detail, the granular level of it, it's kind of hard. And when you do that, then you're able to think. I'm analytical, and being that, I need to understand, what the consequence could be, reduce that conflict. So, yeah.
So avoid conflict. You mentioned that a lot because it's something that could occur rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who wants to have a legal battle between a tenant or a supplier and an owner or a landlord? It's not pleasant. No. At the end of the day, it's not pleasant. I think Groupe MACH does that very well. We try to be there for the tenant. Like we said, we can be hard when we need to be, but at the end of the day, I think we're fair. And you can't get more fair than at Groupe MACH. We really look out to do the best what's right for the tenant. And if that fails, then that means everything else has failed because we really go the extra mile. But at the end of the day, an obligation is an obligation. A lease is a lease. So there's, like I said, there's the good tenants you don't have to worry about. They understand it. They play it well. And those you give the respect and the service, and you're driven even further to do what's right. Yeah. It's a work in progress. It's not easy. Listen, we have over 4,000 tenants, if not more. Maybe I'm making even a mistake this morning, but that's a lot of tenants, a lot of bodies, and we have a lot of governmental bodies and a lot of big important retail tenants. So you need to be really on the ball. I also say that you need to know the tenant, that relationship. You can't just build it through an email or a phone call. You actually need to shake their hands, see them, be with them.
And do you have to do that, or you have your team that makes sure that
The team does that. I'm behind them to make sure. Okay. There's moments where I need to be with the tenant as well. One, they might know me in the industry. Two, it might be the right thing to do to show stripe. So you go out with your team and you say, hey, I'm part of them and we have a problem, and you want to be able to show that you can support, maybe come to a settlement. So I get to meet them too. But I would say the team is right there on the field, and it's their daily routine.
Regarding your role as a COO, would you say there are any misconceptions about it, like the way people view it from the outside, or there isn't any? Like maybe like COOs are somebody that has to be so firm and things like that.
It's a great question. I would think that in 30 years ago, saying you were the chief operating officer of a company was this guy in a room with, his eyebrows down and don't enter the room. He's on, it's the COO is upset today. I don't think that's what it's about. I think the COO role is being someone that's complete, that has lived certain experiences, and you take those experiences and you try to teach it, share it with your group, and maybe sometimes you need to take some of the punches. You're there for that as well. So I think it's maybe just showing out of experience. Yeah.
What is the best part of your job? Something that you really like, you really enjoy?
I would say knowing that you resolved a problem and you did that complete 360 brings joy, for sure. I'm a technical person, so when I'm able to step in and resolve something technical for the benefit of the organization, that brings joy as well. But I would say that bringing resolution to a problem.
So would the worst part being when you cannot solve the resolution?
When you cannot resolve, there's always a way to resolve a problem. I remember an old boss of mine that once said, I said to him, it's impossible. And I stopped using that word in my career because he turned around and said, how can you say it's impossible? We've gone to the moon. And I never forgot that. And he's right. If we can go to the moon, then everything is possible. So bringing a resolution, when it doesn't work out and you've tried everything, to me, it's not a failure. I think if you've exhausted every avenue and you've had to resort to a conflict and you didn't bring resolution the way you want, it's still resolution in my mind.
And for companies that maybe they're in the growth phase, and how could they know when it is time to hire a chief operating officer?
I would say that depending on the business that they do, the volume of business that they do, and what they need to oversee. A chief operating officer means a lot of things to different companies, right? Yes. I'll give you for instance. And if you look at a COO in a role for a manufacturing outfitter, well, in his role, it's going to be about streamlining the business, optimizing, bringing efficiency because he wants to reduce costs per output. Not that they're not similar in real estate, but in real estate, minus those few things I just said, we're there to, adhere to compliancy, risk management, ensure that our protocol, our standards, our objectives are met. So I would say if you're a small company, you don't necessarily need that individual. If you start to grow into a 50 plus and the volume of business is really high, then I think an analytical thinker like them would help, because at the end of the day, we also try to create value, right? In real estate, I would say one of my roles is if I have an asset, a building that is completely not working, we just can't seem to rent it, or we can't get the rent lifts that we want, sometimes you got to think out of the box and say, what could we do with this property, right? So part of that thinking is, how do I influence? And we have a brilliant team on board, but how do I play a part with them to say, you know what, maybe it's time we reposition this asset, or we look at it totally different and not let it get stagnant and perhaps just, fall in the cracks.
Well said. And what are some of the common traits of a successful COO? I guess you just mentioned a bunch of things. I guess if they do all of these things right, that's what it would be, or do you want to?
No, I think you got to be analytical. That's for sure.
Okay.
If you're not, tends not to work because you're also working with numbers. You're also working with problem solving. So you need to be that type of individual. You need to also be able to have initiative. Create initiatives. Initiatives don't come to you. You've got to create them. If you don't create initiatives, for example, information technology, well, part of what reports into me is also IT department, information technology. So how do I think with them to evolve in real estate? Obviously with artificial intelligence and with, working with the infrastructure that's behind IT. It's not just, repair a phone. We do a lot more than that. We have this misconception that IT is, call them, they're going to reboot your computer, but we do a lot more than that. And
can you elaborate on what else?
For example, we don't use servers. We're completely 100% in the cloud. We have all protocols in place for cyber attacks, for security that we work and do. We have security training where we hack into someone's computer, but purposely, just to see how we react to some of the training that we've provided. So we're always constantly trying to evolve into something a lot bigger, a lot more with the innovative ways. I mean, we evolve. If you don't evolve, it's not just, again, the phone is just an aspect of something that, probably anyone can do if they really read the instructions. But the IT department goes a further way. And so we look at those things. We look at, nowadays we're a big company. Can we be hacked? Can we be held with ransom? Can an email go in and cause a lot of harm? Of course.
Yes.
So we need an IT department to block that, to stop that. And that thinking is going on every day. And that's an initiative. Moons ago, 10 years ago, we didn't have an IT department. 10 years later, we created it. It was an initiative that we brought forward. And we thought about it. We said, you know what? This is important. We can't outsource something that needs to be, in-house, loyal to us and understand our ways. So those are kind of the things that anyone in executive needs to think of. I think about it every day to make sure that I reduce the risk.
So when there's an idea like that, for example, you said 10 years ago you didn't have it, but now you have it. How do you go about bringing in a new department? What are some of the steps that are involved? Who do you have to speak with? How many people have to sit
that's a good question. Obviously, you got to evaluate what is it costing you to outsource something that's not really personalized to the group. Mm-hmm. And then once you get to see what we started with one member in IT department, and for the cost of outsourcing it, it was easier to have someone internal, but at least internal, we were personalizing and customizing the product.
Yes, exactly.
So I think that once you can show that, it's a business case, right? Mm-hmm. You show the numbers. Here's outsourcing it. And at the end of the day, it's always service calls because they're not sitting in your office. You got to call them. So they come in, they fix a problem, but they're not fixing for the future. They're fixing your immediate problem with no interest of, let me propose that we got to go cloud. Let me propose that we got to start thinking XYZ. So, 10 years later, we're now 4, hopefully going on to 5 members in the department. But we take care of all of our hubs. Ontario, the Atlantic, the province of Quebec. We go around. We have mobile IT individuals that go out and fix the issues right there on site, something that was unheard of, 10 years ago. So I think there's a lot behind creating these initiatives.
And are there any new departments you guys are thinking about behind the scene you want to bring in?
No, I think Groupe MACH has plenty. We do everything almost in-house: legal, accounting, financial, operations, property management, construction, so development. MACH has got a department full of urban planners and architects feverishly working through conceptual designs and how to improve an asset or how to, get a project up and going. So, no, we've got quite a bit.
So would you say that's what set MACH apart from the competitors?
I think so. I think we're pretty proud of it. We work everything internal. We use of obviously external forces, but internally we've got a bunch of great people, smart people, and definitely bring a lot to the table. And what makes it nice is that we're doing it for ourselves. Everything that we do, it's not third-party management. If we're doing refinancing, we're refinancing our own properties and thinking of the best way to refinance it or finance it. We're always looking at increasing asset value. We're always trying to make a deal. So
and
all
how
of these.
Do you do that? Like increase the asset value? Could you elaborate a bit on this?
Sure. I mean, if sometimes we'll buy a building and it's got a high vacancy.
Okay.
A lot would fear it. Us at MACH, we don't fear it as much. I think we go in saying, you know what, the price might be right, the price point to pick up this asset or this acquisition might be right, and we're fully conscious that we're going to go in knowing that we're going to have a lot of work to do and to lease it. And it gives us inspiration. I think that's what we're good at. At the end of the day, that's where we create value. We might pick up something for slightly cheaper or maybe someone else couldn't do it in the same way we did. But then, you know what? We turn around and, wow, guys, it was a 50% vacancy and now we're 100% vacant. We've just created value. We've just, gave life to this building and everything that goes with it.
Does that mean you have to renovate, change the layout?
We've got to renovate. Again, initiatives where we will look at an asset and say, you know what? Maybe we have to revamp the lobby.
Okay.
Maybe we have to spruce up some of the corridors. We have to make sure that the condition of the building is worthy of housing good covenant tenants. For sure, if you got a leaky roof and you want to live with a leaky roof, then you're going to live with problems and you're going to live with unsatisfied tenants. That's not our model. Our model is if it's leaking, you're going to go ahead and fix it. Obviously, if fixing it because you still can take 10 or 15 years out of that roof, that's fine. That's a good model. If we feel that you can't, then you got to re-roof, and we will do that too. We follow a capital expenditure program, pretty tight. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean it's green light everywhere, but we have a program, and we say every year we're going to do this for this asset and that for that asset. And unless something changes, we try to adhere to it. Always with, if it's a class A or B or C or D building, it doesn't matter. We want to try to be the best in all of those classes. But I think we need to also always think of the initial investment and how do we keep the asset condition to where it should be. And that we do a lot of thinking on it, and we do it well.
Was there any bad investment in the building you purchased thinking that you could revamp it and then it turned out to be...
I'll knock on wood. So far, no.
Okay, good.
It's been successful. We got a brilliant president who understands the business and does miraculous things and brings vision. So no, on that front, I would say I can't really look at any asset for the last 10 years that I know MACH and say we've done a bad one. They're challenging. Of course, they get challenged. Yes. There's got to be challenge. They're not always easy. It's not always you get one that's 50% vacant, and a year later we've hit 100%, fully occupied the target. But they become more challenging. But the challenge is good because it keeps everyone on their toes as well.
Yes, and that keeps a lot of people, they can't buy it, like you said, right?
That's true too.
Keep them out.
For sure.
And I know there's a lot of talk about ESG, everywhere. What are some of the initiatives that you're taking on that regard?
So ESG has become a big word. Obviously, everyone wants to try to reduce their carbon footprint. Without knowing, we started doing this probably 8 years ago, only because we believed in if you had to replace capital spending for whatever it is, I'm going to speak here a little technical, but boilers or chillers or a roof. Well, then, if we were going to do it, was there a way to do it and also at the same time look at energy consumption? Could we reduce our utility consumption? Okay, and if we could, was there any grants available for it? And so slowly but surely, and as ESG started to come into the picture, we realized, wow, we were doing both. We were replacing the asset heartbeat, but at the same time, we were also complying with something that everyone now talks about, which is carbon footprint and what are you doing for your building. So many years later, and every year we try to aim at one or two big projects that are worthy. When I say worthy, meaning are the biggest polluters and that give us the greatest impact as well. So when you're able to say to someone that we've reduced 3,000 or 4,000 tons of in the carbon footprint, it means a lot. It means that that's probably the equivalent of 1,000 or 2,000 cars off the road, and the number keeps growing. So we're blessed to make sure that we pioneer it the way we should. We also are fortunate grants are still out there. Sometimes they're not, the payback is not what we think, but we still go ahead and do it because we do what's right for the asset. But I think everyone's going to have to comply at some point. Our targets of 2030 and 2040 and 2050 are not that far away. And so we all have to be prepared. And it's not just an owner. In the ESG component, if I speak only about the environmental portion, at the end of the day, also the utility companies have to be ready. Changing and electrifying the entire neighborhood is a huge undertaking for them as well because we don't have the infrastructure for it. So if everyone tomorrow morning wanted to comply and wanted to ensure they reduce their carbon footprint, would they be ready for us? So that's a challenge. But if you stick to a plan, that every year you're going to do project, you're going to take obviously the better projects of the worst. In the end, you're going to have to do them all. But I think if we start, I always say baby steps, they seem to be working and we seem to be making an impact, a true impact. We have consultants on board. We review the numbers. We review the consumption bills. We look at also the asset. We say, you know what? You got a 45-year-old chiller. Rather than just replace to replace, could we replace it with a lot smaller, changing the complete design of it in the building. The building was used to so much. Can we do it little? Little means optimizing your footprint, efficiency, but also educating the end user, the tenant.
Yes.
Could we live with, for example, 20 degrees Celsius rather than 22? Yeah, we could.
That makes a big difference.
It makes a big difference. But you know what? You'll wear a sweater, and we will have done two things. We will have, we will have collaborated with what everyone wants to do, which is not consume from an energy perspective in a wrong way. And at the same time, we're also changing that carbon footprint, right?
And does that impact the tenant? Do you have to, like in terms of their monthly payment for the lease?
Well, obviously, if we can reduce consumption, we reduce the cost per square foot, the benefit is the tenant, right? If he's paying so much for energy and all of a sudden I can show him that there's a 15, 20 or 30 cents decrease, of course they're happy. And we're happy too because we can lease. We become more competitive. If I reduce my OPEX, or what we call that expense budget, by even a 25 cents or 50 cents, that makes us more competitive to the neighbor, and our leasing team is happy as well. So everyone wins. It's a win-win for all.
Yeah, that's great. And looking ahead in the future for your industry, the impact that you want to leave in your industry, my question is, what impact are you trying to leave or create? Basically.
Personally, I mean, if I can one day turn around and say, and I'm actually thinking it now, you say 10 years later, we were, maybe 50. Today we're 400 and my department is 220. And if you can turn around one day and say, wow, we got these hubs, these different provinces, all to think a certain MACH way. The standard is the same. It's a cookie cutter everywhere we go. And you've done it with different provinces, different employees, different mentalities, different backgrounds, and do it right and continue to do it right. That would be leaving a great mark.
Yeah.
It would be showing that whatever I tried to deliver in 10 years has been working and working in a positive way.
So it seems like culture is at the heart of Groupe MACH.
Culture is key, for sure. You've got to keep the culture, or else you're all over the place. The model doesn't change. If we say to ourselves that we're going to do what's right for the asset, we got to believe in it and we got to do what's right for the asset. If that culture is not there, then you're not going to be able to deliver. But culture is key because of who we are. We're a private company. We care for our people. Just doing it the way we do it. We are conscious of the money that we spend. So it's not a free-for-all. It's not, whatever it is we will pay. It's how far can we go with our dollar, because we thought about it in a detailed way, in a meticulous way. That's who we are. I think we care because it belongs to us. So when the properties belong to one owner, we use our leverage, we use that synergy to make sure that we're not just going to spend, $1 and not realize what we're spending it for, and how far can that dollar be stretched in order to still achieve the same result. We're a lot more tighter with how we do the business. I think that's what distinguishes us from most.
Caring is important, like you said. You said it a few times, so that's the main word I got out of it. That's very good. And do you have anybody that you look up to? Mentors or...
That's a great question. I would say that there's been quite a few. One of my most recent was my previous employer. I thought that COO was brilliant in his approach, the way he articulated conversations, the way he drove his team in a certain direction, and I looked up to him a lot. And I think he gave me a lot of that coaching, that ability. And I met him maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It was one of the last times I saw him. And he came to my office and he saw, back then I was still playing the role of vice president, but he was so proud of me. And I kept telling him, there's a few things that I use, some of your tricks, they're not even mine, they're yours. And he says, give me one. So, I shared something really personal with him. And I think those kind of people drive me. There's been also, people from school that have left a positive impact on me. There's so many brilliant people that you learn from them. Today, I'm learning also from the ones that I work with now, my colleagues, our president. There's so many people out there that can motivate you to be better than what you are.
And how do you stay happy, Vince? Because you do a lot of problem solving. There's always those emails. There's always something to fix. How do you stay sane in your position? So
the way I can describe that is, and I tell this to my staff, that sometimes I'm probably my own enemy because one of the things is I get home. I'm a musician.
Oh, really?
I've been playing for, so now I would say I started at the age of 14. So one of the things that relaxes me, just to stay away for a while from work, or not to just think, is that obviously I've been playing guitar from the age of 14. I've got a collection of guitars, and it just, I feel like I'm in a studio. I close myself in, and I play away. It just brings me to another level,
Nice.
a moment of zen. The other way around is just constantly trying to better myself. I am happy. There's going to be moments that are, hard. The day is not always, full of sunshine. There's going to be a cloudy day. But I think I take those cloudy days, and it's those moments where I just need to But I'm very blessed because I got a great family, a supportive people, and they help me get through to the harder moments. Let's say.
Of course, yeah. We're human, right?
Yeah, for sure.
These things happen. And what would you recommend? I don't know, books that people could read that speak specifically for the CEO positions or management or property management that you would recommend?
I'm not so much for books because you can read. I'm not saying that it's not important. Are there books to recommend? I would say rather than reading a book about a chief operating officer and what he does on a daily basis, or I would say if you're going to pick up a book, it's more a book about people in general, motivational. For example, and it's pretty old-fashioned, but you know what? So many years later, he's still much alive and kicking because I use it a lot in my day-to-day, something like Dale Carnegie. Yeah. I went to their certification program many moons ago, probably in the early 90s, and so many years later, he's still alive and kicking. His books still have an effect. His motivational quotes, taking life the way it is, has taught me a lot as well, right? Nothing comes to you unless you go to it. The fear, having fear. How do you fight fear? So I read those type of books. Those are the ones that give me the most pleasure over and above reading a technical book like engineering and stuff. I think those are the kind of books that make me think and say, you know what? Yeah, I have anxiety. When I took Dale Carnegie as a perfect example, that makes a strong COO because you're forced to talk in front of people. You're forced to do presentations. And you'd be surprised how many people have anxieties and are nervous and can't do public speaking. And that course, over that 12-week session, taught me a lot about how to come out of your shell and truly not feel nervous or overwhelmed or embarrassed to even try to speak. And so I would think books like that make a strong COO because you need to present. You need to present cases. You need to public speak. Something like we're doing today would have been unheard of, 30, 40 years ago because a lot of people are nervous just in front of the mic. Now, is it because my background being in music, having been in a band and having been in front of public? But at the end of the day, it's reading the right things to make your position a lot stronger. Yeah.
And is there anything that we missed during the conversation, or how would you summarize this conversation for somebody who's listening? They didn't get to hear everything we said, but then they hear that punching line at the end.
Well, I would say that for starters, you driving these questions the way you have has made me realize that, I had prepared of how I could answer and what could I piece together that would sound so fascinating and abundantly intelligent, but just being natural and trying to answer your questions truthfully, showing that it's not just about a title, it's about being you. A chief operating officer, a vice president, a senior executive, a property manager, we all have a certain role to play, and that comes with accountability and responsibilities. And so at the end of the day, I would say the best way to perform any job or to be who you are, is to do what's right. If you believe that what you're doing is for the right reasons, I think all the success comes with it. If you're doing it just to get ahead of someone else or trying to cheat your way around the problem, I don't think gets you far. It might at the very beginning, but it seems to catch up to you. At some point, they say, wait a minute, you're not real. I've tried to be real. I tried to stick to who I am. I would say you asked me a question at the beginning of this podcast. You said, how would you describe yourself? So I got to tell you, at work, a lot of people see me as this. It's always no. They say, oh, no, don't go to VDD because it's going to be no. And there's a reason behind the no. I think that no has always been like a stopper. It's like, should we do this? No. Because we want to go through that thinking. Let's give it a bit of thought. And it seems to work. It might sound like it's impulsive and I think he don't go to VDD, it's going to be no. But at the end of the day, it's not no because we don't want to do it. It's no because can we talk about it and not, take for granted that it's just going to happen. And I educate people that everything requires some form of discussion, dialogue, business case, just to get to the result.
That's very interesting. They're going to call you Mr. No at first.
Mr. No.
And what do you like about the city of Montreal, Vince?
Everything. I think we've got culture. It's so European. I've been, originally I'm from Italy, so, and I've been in Europe just 10 days ago.
Okay.
Everything is wonderful when you're in Europe, when you're in other provinces, in other countries. But I got to tell you, Montreal is unique. We got everything. We got the people, minus the weather, but that's getting better because of our climate change. But I would say the people, the different cultures that exist, make that this city is so special, so vibrant. We're calm. We're good. We're good compared to most. We're really good people. There's a lot more good than bad, and a lot. You go. I work out of Old Montreal, and you feel like you're in Europe.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Every restaurant is great. The people are great. You almost feel like you're not even at work. The city is so that section of the city. But in general, there's nothing not to dislike about Montreal. I like the fact that we speak both languages. The most they would say is a negative. It's a positive for me because you take a guy like me that's Italian that can speak Italian, that can speak 2 other languages, and you've got that blessing that you can do it across Canada. It's not always the same. So I think that this province, Montreal as a city, is really unique. I enjoy it. I enjoy everything about it.
Well said. I like that. Well, Vince, it was a pleasure and an honor to have you on the Montreal Entrepreneur Podcast. And until next time.
Thank you for having me. And this was inspirational for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you.